Let's get a quick take on the U.S. Department of the Interior launching a 60-day review into the preservation of the sage grouse. Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke noted that the process will examine conservation efforts while considering, quote, the value of energy and other development of public lands. Patty Calhoun from Westward, this becomes an issue in Colorado because there was a long, hard-fought compromise crafted, I think it was just last year, maybe a little bit before that, between industry and environmentalists and the government. Is all of it going for naught at this point?
I think that deal is dead as the dodo. Hickenlooper had worked really hard with the Western governors to come up with that compromise. They're meeting at the end of the month up in Montana, so maybe they'll be able to craft something. But as we've seen from the 100 Days of Zinc, which we just celebrated, there are a lot of things under threat right now. Public lands, that they might privatize operations of some of the national parks, some of the national monuments that had just been named in the last 2 decades. There's a lot going on at Interior, and this little bird's going to get run over in the process.
David Kopel from the Independence Institute and DU Law School. I guess in some of the textbooks I've read, it seemed that some parts of conservatism would be about local control and saying the states, or maybe in this case a region, would be able to have control over something. This seems like the opposite, but maybe I'm reading it wrong. Your thoughts?
Well, the endangered, as Gail Norton said when she was in her confirmation hearings to be Bush's Secretary of the Interior, part of being a conservative is conservation. Absolutely, that ethic's essential. The Endangered Species Act is certainly the opposite of local control. It is a federal statute that was passed with very good intentions, but has worked out terribly. Hardly any species that's ever been listed on the Endangered Species Act has ever been delisted and recovered. It's draconian in terms of how it treats landowners, and the people who live in farms and ranches in western Colorado, they're part of the natural environment too. They have a right to exist, as does the sage grouse. The compromise that Hickenlooper worked out was sort of the compromise you can come up with when a guy's put a gun to your head and is robbing you, and he lets you keep $25 after you give him all your credit cards. It was one-sided and unfair, the best that could be done under the circumstances. But I think it's appropriate that there be a readjustment, and I think absolutely Interior will be able to work out something that is fair and balanced to the people of western Colorado and to the preservation of the sage grouse.
Penfield Tate, attorney with QTech Rock, also a longtime state lawmaker. What do you make of David's last statement? Or was the previous one one-sided, or is there a chance for something that would be more fair to the entire population of the West, including landowners, energy folks, and the sage grouse?
Well, you have to start with the understanding that Zinke has made it clear, and his administration has made it clear, that the development of power and resources is more important than anything else, preservation of public lands or preservation of native species. So they start from the proposition that energy development, especially fossil fuels, is more important than anything else, because they ran on the platform of jobs, and even though it is a dying industry and we're over time transitioning to other forms of energy, that's where they're going to put their money, and so that's what they're going to do. Fair is relative. The oil and energy exploration companies are going to like the new deal they get. Environmentalists and other local communities probably will not. Remember, this deal is not just Colorado, but it's a number of western Rocky Mountain states, most of whom's governors have advocated for maintaining the status quo, but they know that's not going to happen. So Patty's right, the sage grouse is about to be run over, but the more significant problem and policy issue is when certain efforts are made and when certain development occurs, it's going to do irreparable damage to the land and to these species. And David's right. It's rare that a listed species ever gets delisted, because usually the protections put in place to list them are too little too late.
Right. Craig Silverman rounds out the panel, attorney with Silverman & Levis, also a radio talk show host on KNUS AM every Saturday morning. Craig, this seemed like a pretty big feather in Hickenlooper's legacy hat, I guess, if you were to create that metaphor. Does this, A, is it plucked forever, and B, does Hickenlooper is there a way for him to salvage anything from this situation?
Well, there might be. Moffat County and other jurisdictions may come up with their own solutions. This is a huge story in Craig, Colorado. Are we on there? I'm not.
We are indeed
good.
there.
Well, I'm not grousing about it. I educated myself. This is an adorable species of bird where the females judge the males on their breast size and shape, and that's kind of interesting. You gotta love that. The males puff and pop out their chest during the mating season. And I think even if Ryan Zinke and Donald Trump go about undoing what Barack Obama and John Hickenlooper came up with, Moffat County and these other jurisdictions will continue to work on solutions because they really love the sage grouse up there.